Come over to the dark side of whiskey with Black Irish. Welcome to Dram Fine Whiskey. My name is Matt, and today we're looking at a drink that is in a bit of controversy at the moment, Black Irish from Darker Still Spirits. Now, before I get into the controversy around this drink, let's just take a minute to appreciate this bottle. From the cap on it, which is reminiscent of a Guinness Extra Stout bottle, to this kind of milk jug-like closure system, it's really cool looking. And the rest of the bottle looks really cool. It's very distinctive and it stands out a lot. I had to mention the bottle before I open it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get this into the glass, and while I do that, you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Only takes you a second, doesn't cost you anything, but lets you see all the other videos I put out. I put out a whiskey review every Wednesday and a cocktail recipe every Friday, so hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, and you'll see them all. I'm also going to try this over ice, because I have heard from a few people who've tried it that it is quite sweet, so I think it actually might go really well over ice. Now, before I drink it, what is all this controversy? So apparently Mariah Carey is coming out with her own kind of Irish cream liqueur, which she is calling Black Irish. This liqueur was recently launched in the US in July, I think it was, and she uses the same name as this drink. This drink is produced by Darker Still Spirits, and they've been making it for a long time. So now apparently Mariah Carey's lawyers are suing Darker Still Spirits to try and take the trademark of Black Irish from them. The reason they're saying they can do this is because Darker Still haven't meaningfully used their copyright in a number of years, but looking at their Instagram, looking at everything, they've been marketing this for ages, they're very clearly selling it, so I'm not sure that I agree with Mariah Carey's lawyers on that front. One of the guys at Darker Still actually made a kind of a satirical Instagram post where he made a pose just like Mariah Carey did. I'll put the pictures there, you can see them. They're actually kind of funny, and it shows that these guys aren't really serious, not really kind of angry about this whole thing. They're just taking it with a pinch of salt, like a good bunch of lads, and I think that they're in the right on this front. So enough controversy, let's actually talk about the drink. This is called a spirit drink because it can't actually be called a whiskey. That's because it is a blend of triple distilled Irish whiskey mixed with stout. It is clocking in at 40% alcohol by volume though, so don't expect this to be some kind of soft liqueur. This is still going to be pretty full bodied, pretty full on, pretty full flavoured. I also expect this to have huge notes of cocoa, of espresso, of nice kind of bitter spice, the kind of spices you would get from stout. Now, stout cask whiskies are nothing new. Stout cask is quite a nice kind of combination where you take whiskey, you put it into stout casks for a couple of months, it extracts some of the flavours from the wood and imparts that into the whiskey. This though is a bit different. It's a mixture of whiskey and stout, so I expect those flavours to really mesh in together, and so that's why I'm going to try it neat and with ice. Darker Still actually recommend also trying to pair it with an espresso, so I'm going to go ahead and make myself a shot of espresso, and thanks to the miracles of editing, I've got an espresso right here, so I'm going to try it all three different ways. I'm going to try it neat, I'm going to try it with ice, I'm going to try pairing it with that shot of espresso. So let's get into it. On the nose, oh, it's quite sweet. So this is actually the first time I'm trying it. On the nose, I'm getting very sweet up front. It is actually almost like a liqueur kind of sweetness, but underneath that there's a lot of kind of vanilla, a lot of kind of deep kind of molasses almost. I think it's quite a deep kind of syrupy sweetness in there. There's a bit of vanilla and there's like a lot of cocoa, a lot of chocolate. I'm getting some espresso as well, like a little bit of coffee. I'm gonna move this away, make sure I'm not just smelling that. No, but definitely it's kind of like a sweet stout, very, very stout forward here. It's nice. There's kind of, there's a bit of spice in there, just trying to figure out what kind of spice it is. It's almost kind of nutmeggy or allspicey. There's like a little bit in there of cinnamon as well, but I think it's not directly cinnamon forward the same way you might associate that with like a bourbon or something like that. It's not very cinnamon forward. It's just a nice kind of deep kind of sweetness here. It actually is kind of reminiscent of Killowen's Gloria coffee liqueur, which is a mix of coffee and poitín, which is mixed together in bourbon barrels and aged for a while. So it's definitely got that deep, round sweetness here. There's no sharpness at all coming from it, so it's quite refreshing in that regard. Because it is 40%, they would have had to use alcohol. The whiskey component would have had to have been over 40%, because then when they mixed it with the stout, it would have brought that alcohol percentage down. So it's good to see that the alcohol they use isn't probably cheap, it's not quite sharp, it's definitely kind of nicely muted, nicely mixed in. So let's go in for the palate. Okay, again, sweetness forward. It's definitely got a lot of sweetness in here. I'm glad I'm going to try it with ice, and glad I'm going to try it with that coffee, because I think it really will work well with that. But neat, it's nice. The sweetness isn't like sticky though. It doesn't like clog your mouth. Isn't all you can taste. There's still that really nice, deep kind of malty stout note coming through. More of those spices, almost a little citrusy, like a little bit of like an orange peel, that kind of citrus. Just that nice kind of deep sweetness, the maltiness, the whiskiness. The whiskey doesn't really come through a lot. It's nice and kind of mellow. It is a triple distilled Irish whiskey, so it's not going to be overly spiky or sharp. It's not going to be smoky. It's not going to be really spicy coming through like a bourbon. It's going to be a nice base on which they build that kind of stout flavour on top of it. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to see if there's anything else. Okay, again, I'm just getting more of that stout flavour. I think the longer I go back into it, the more the stout that kind of comes through. That kind of nice creamy vanilla comes through a little bit, and the whiskey comes through a little bit more because I think of that vanilla note that's coming through, but it's quite nice. So on to the finish. Okay, again, like I said, that sweetness doesn't stick around too long. It is quite sweet, but it doesn't hang around, doesn't really fill your mouth up with sweetness. It doesn't just stick around, and it doesn't leave an unpleasant sweetness behind. The spice is probably the part that lingers the most. That kind of cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, that kind of flavour hangs around probably the longest. I think this actually would really work well with an Irish coffee or an iced Irish coffee. So I might try experimenting with this, try and find a good kind of Irish coffee recipe, or maybe something else that will go really well with this. But in the meantime, I'm going to try it 2 different ways. So first, I think I'm going to try it with ice, because I do think this will work quite well. Because it is quite sweet, the ice might just bring it down a bit, might make it a bit more refreshing. It is a nice warm summer's day in Ireland, so I think this might be quite refreshing. So let's give it a go. I actually think it's better neat than with ice. I think putting it on ice, it has diluted it a bit. Now I did use a single large rock of ice, so it hasn't diluted it too much, but I think by chilling it down, adding that bit of dilution, it's kind of muted some of the flavours. That nice refreshing spice, that citrus, it's basically completely gone. I can't really taste it. Yeah, the spice and the citrus is completely muted. It's gone behind everything else. The sweetness is still there. That stout, that kind of malted note, that's still there. The vanilla is there a little bit, but it's I think been completely overtaken by the ice. So I actually wouldn't recommend having this on ice. I think maybe mixing it with coffee in an iced drink, that might be a different story, because then you're going to get that nice stouty note coming through. You're going to get that coffee note, the espresso note coming through. But I think neat on ice, not the way to go. So let's try it with an espresso, as they recommend. So they call this the double black because it's a shot of black espresso with black Irish, and I think it should work well. As I said, that coffee note comes through, so it might accentuate it, but because it's quite sweet, that kind of bitterness you're going to get from the espresso might be muted then by the black Irish. So I'm going to try it. And now the espresso. Okay, I think espresso then black Irish, that's the way to go. Oh, that's actually quite a nice combination. The bitterness from the espresso. So once you swallow an espresso, you get that coffee note, but then you get that kind of concentrated, lingering kind of bitterness, the acidity kind of coming through at the end, hanging around the back of your palate. But when you drink the black Irish, the sugariness that kind of mutes it, but because this is there's a lot of coffee notes coming through from this, because there's cocoa notes coming through from that, it doesn't distract from the coffee. You're still getting the coffee flavour, but the bitterness is being muted by the sugariness, the sweetness coming through from the black Irish. So that's actually pretty good. I'm going to try it again, coffee and then black Irish. Okay, second go around, getting a lot more vanilla coming through. So yeah, the black Irish, that coffee note comes through, but then because it is whiskey, there was, aging in probably bourbon barrels, there's a nice bit of vanilla that comes through, really accentuates the coffee. I think this is the way to go, compared to the ice, definitely. So that's quite nice. I might drink a bit more of this later on. So let's give this a bit of a wrap up, I guess. If I was to say my least favorite way of having this, probably with ice. The flavors got too muted, I think. They got too diluted, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. I mean, they didn't recommend it themselves, so I can see why. This is just completely me, so I wouldn't go with it on ice. I think neat, it's quite nice, it's quite refreshing. It's got that nice kind of sweetness to it. It's got that nice kind of stouty, malty note coming through. It's quite nice, kind of different. If you're going to pair it with something, pairing with coffee does add a different dimension to it. So I think my favourite way to drink it so far that I've had today was probably with the coffee, and then with the Black Irish chasing it up. Because it's quite sweet, I don't imagine I'd be able to drink like 2 or 3 or 4 glasses of this in one go, but by chasing the coffee with the Black Irish, it was a really nice combination. It kind of really accentuated the coffee notes coming through, the vanilla came through, the sweetness came through. I think this would really go well in like an iced coffee or an Irish coffee. Now, it is a bit hot right now for an Irish coffee, that's definitely a winter's drink, so I might actually experiment by trying to make a good iced coffee recipe using Black Irish to add a little bit of booze to it, add a little bit of different dimension to it, while not taking away from the fact that it is an iced coffee drink. If you've got any suggestions for cocktails I could make with the Black Irish, leave a comment down below. I'd be really happy to try them out. I think it's very unique. I'm definitely going to try out different drinks with it. I mean, I've got a whole bottle of it now. I definitely have to try something new with it. So I'm going to keep on experimenting with that. I hope the guys at Darker Still Spirits do well against Mariah Carey. I mean, she's got a huge amount of money behind her, but I think that they've been using this name for a long time. I think realistically they should win it. They should win it. They're definitely been using it for a while. I think it's kind of a David and Goliath story. I think if you can see this bottle on the shelf, and it's very distinctive, so you'll be able to see it, maybe buy a bottle, maybe support them. It is a bit of a David and Goliath story. I mean, especially these days in a global pandemic, we should try and support all the small businesses we can. So I definitely think you should try and support them any way you can. If you see a bottle, pick it up. I very much think you'll enjoy it, especially mixed with a coffee if you like a coffee. So I'm going to keep on enjoying this. I hope you enjoy it. I hope they do well, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.